Hey everyone, welcome back to the Other Side Podcast. I am one of your hosts, jbirkey, and as always, I am here with my good friend Caleb Hires. We're so happy to be back with you for this next episode. And Caleb, how are you doing, sir? Good, sir.
Doing great. Getting ready to leave for Israel again. So
Nice. Yeah, remind me when that's happening, when you're heading out to Israel again.
I'm actually heading out a day early this time and catching some sleep over in Tel Aviv before I join with the team, which is amazing because an 11-hour flight after almost 24 hours of travel is just awful. So I'm heading
It's,
out on the 28th.
it sounds pretty brutal. Like that's some serious
I
jet
mean,
lag.
yeah, honestly, going there is not nearly as bad as coming back. I guess the certain rotation of the earth or whatever. I don't know.
That sounds a lot
So
like science.
science and things. Yes.
Yeah. Hey, man, this is a conversation about faith. There's no room for science, okay? Let's leave all your science at
Oh,
the door.
man.
Welcome to a future conversation.
Absolutely. That is a podcast in the making right there.
So who are you
Yeah.
going there with? Who are you going to Israel with?
Going with the Banoffs. Been with them 5 times so far. And we just, we throw parties for the poor on both sides of the fence, if you know what I mean. And we just bring some joy and we pray for the sick and we feed the poor and it's awesome.
Good. So you're not going with your buddy who wrote the Passion Translation this time, huh?
Actually,
Brian Simmons, have you go ahead.
he's the guest on their trip. So he will be on the trip, but it's not his trip. You know what I mean? So yeah.
Okay, he do Israel trips, or does he just join as a guest?
He does his own trips in the fall. He's been doing that for a few
Okay.
years, but he's often asked to come and teach, you have a person who's translating the Bible, teaching the Bible in the land where the Bible happened. It's pretty rich. So
That sounds pretty convenient, you
yeah,
know? Sounds like a guy you'd want to have along.
that's it. That is it,
Kind of
man.
like a worship leader. Like you'd like to have a worship leader along with you the places that you go, right, Caleb?
Yes. Somebody with a guitar, they can travel with their instruments. Very convenient. Very convenient.
Yes, somebody with a guitar and a beanie and who's not afraid to go barefoot.
Right.
Right. All right. So thank you all for traveling with us through our initial episode covering the topic of abortion. You have wandered into part two of our conversation, and let me recap quickly some of what we talked about in the first episode. If you haven't listened to that, I encourage you to go back and give that a listen. It's valuable stuff. We talked about the way that we should approach this type of conversation, as well as other polarizing topics.
Mhm.
Remembering that our worth and value isn't secured in whatever platform we're standing on. We don't get to be better people if we're pro-life, and we don't get to be better people if we're pro-choice. It doesn't work like that. You can still be a piece of crap and be a pro-life person, right?
Oh,
Whoa.
just come out and say it, why don't you?
Well, so anyway, moving right along from that, I forgot we were recording there for a second. The other thing that was a huge takeaway from the first part of our conversation was that most people are in fact pro-life. It doesn't really matter if you call yourself a pro-life or pro-choice person. The vast majority of the population, of the sane population, is actually pro-life. Most people do believe in life. Like, people aren't wandering around this earth just wondering who they can kill, especially when it comes to babies. I found it very interesting that Bill Clinton himself in the late 90s, and he's mentioned his name. There's a lot of emotions and feelings that come up with that. But Bill Clinton himself said that abortion should be legal, it should be safe, and it should be rare. Bill Clinton himself said it should be a rare thing. Now, that may not be the position that many of you would want him to take, but it just goes to show that a leader of the Democratic Party, which is typically a pro-choice, runs on a pro-choice platform, is expressing the desire that these things should be rare. Like, they shouldn't happen very often,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So don't call people who support the woman's right to choose in this circumstance, don't start accusing them of being baby murderers. That was a huge takeaway, and we apologize on behalf of anybody who had been called that, or
Yeah.
who had been called that from anybody. That's egregious and horrific,
Hmm.
and should never happen. So did, I want to give you a chance, Caleb. Did you remember anything from our last conversation that you wanted to just kind of recap, or are you good?
Yeah, just that it was the cornerstone of the argument is like, if you're for life, you need to be for even the lives of those who disagree with you. And so dehumanizing people because they're dehumanizing a child in the womb is not right either. And so making that your posture, making it one of honor, it's just going to do a lot more for the integrity of the argument and the furtherance of the argument in all respects. So I believe that was a
Yeah.
major part of our conversation.
Yes. Good. I also wanted to share, before we get into it, I want to share testimony with you all. I did get an email from a precious woman who, after listening, found the courage to open up the door to conversation of her traumatic experience with abortion in the past and begin the road to healing. And so, after a lot of years, she was finally able to open up and talk about it with a trusted person, and she is on the way to healing. And
Come on.
that is an incredible testimony. We're so happy that that's happening. I hope that's happening for many more of you, many others. And just a quick point to take from that is whatever side of the argument you stand on, abortions are traumatic. If
Hmm.
you even if you feel like even if you firmly believe that it's your right to choose and that it's your body and therefore whatever's in your body is under your control and authority, it is still traumatic for you to have an abortion, and we want to recognize that and bless you for healing in that, emotionally, physically, every aspect of it. We recognize the trauma involved and just want to legitimize that and bring value to your situation, you know.
Yeah, totally.
um, Talking about the right to choose, I did want to say that I personally applaud the right to choose in general. Like, as a principle, Caleb, I am a believer in the right to choose. I believe that free will is something that has been established on the earth. Like, obviously, you can't have love. You can't love somebody without the ability to choose. You can't have many things without the
Right.
ability to choose. Like, free will comes with choice. I am a firm believer in that, and in fact, I think that the world system's attempt to take away choice and is something that has permeated so many things and has skewed so many things, wrapped, imprisoned so many people, and stripped them of the confidence and their own sense of worth and value to actually make choices. That is something that I look to affirm in everybody that I come across, is that you have the ability to choose. Like, I applaud your right to choose. You have the ability to do that. You are free to make choices. Just because so many people feel like they can't.
Right.
I do, however, see the irony in the fact that many women who choose to have an abortion feel like they have no choice.
Right.
They're doing it. They are applauding and standing firm on the right to choose, but when it comes to actually having an abortion, many of them do it because they feel like they don't have a choice. There's a paradox there.
Right. True.
And yeah, I find that very interesting. But I feel like the right to choose and recognizing the beauty of free will that has been established here, even though a lot of times it becomes an ugly thing, but the principle of free will, the beauty of that. Let me ask you a question, Caleb. Should abortion be legislated in light of the ability to choose being a good thing in many cases because of free will? Does that change your opinion of whether or not abortion should be legislated?
Right. And my answer would be that the ability to choose is paramount, but directly on the heels and the next breath of that argument has to be the consequences of your choices. So you're choosing to do something, and the consequence of your choice has to be weighed in the argument. So I'm a person, I have the right to choose, but I don't think it's right for me to choose to walk up to someone and slap them in the face, a perfect stranger. That would be, I'd have a bad consequence to that choice, right? And so the consequence of our choices needs to be in the conversation. And so when it comes to abortion, the right to choose to terminate an abortion, uh, in my observation and opinion, and speaking as scientifically as I can, it is choosing to end the life of another person. And so and we talked about that extensively. That there's a line, where you say what defines personhood, and so the legislation question comes down to, our legislation exists in order to protect the freedom between individuals. So the and it's hard to even talk about it without saying, without alienating like half of the people listening maybe, but I'm just saying that yes, you have the right to choose what you do with your body, but in reality the child in the womb actually has its own DNA separate from the mother. It has its own brain activity, has its own heartbeat, all that at a certain point. And so when these markers start coming into an individual life, I believe it is important for legislation to be brought that protects the innocent individual from the other individual, although it is an individual within another individual, if I'm making any sense. But
Yes.
that's where the legislation line comes in for me, that it would be protection between individuals. It would be in order to maintain the liberty and freedom of every person, right? So I call a child in the womb a person, and many medical professionals, many scientists, all them, they consider a child in the womb a person. It's just that our laws do not explicitly state personhood in the womb, and that is where I believe the legislation should come in.
Right. And I do see that if you're going to use free will as a basis to decide whether or not you're going to legislate anything, you wouldn't have any laws at all.
Right. Right.
So I definitely do see that. However, there are studies have shown, and this was a 2015 study actually, and in the United States, there were 638,000 abortions in
Mm,
2015.
mm,
Now, studies have also shown there's some research to suggest that in the countries where abortion is illegal, there are just as many abortions.
mm. Right.
However, now you're adding in the countries where it's illegal. Now you're also adding serious health risks to the mother because these procedures are being performed unregulated,
Right.
and oftentimes those types of situations present much more of a hazard to the mothers and uh, anyone else involved than if you're doing it in a safe, sterile environment.
Right.
So I point that out to say that so often we as Christians in our response to social issues think that creating a law is going to fix the problem. And
Right.
and I'm not saying, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that we shouldn't have laws. I understand that.
Sure.
I'm very thankful for the laws that we have. All right.
Yeah.
But in this specific case, it's the problem is not going to go away
No.
by legislating abortion.
No.
You know, and I don't think that either of us have ever said, oh, if we had enough laws, then abortion would be a non-issue. I don't,
Right.
you and I haven't had that conversation, and I don't think that either of us believe that. But there are a lot of believers who think that way, think along those lines. Oh, if we could just have this law, if we could just get this person in office to pass this law, if we could just overturn Roe versus Wade, then the issue would be resolved. Well, I don't think it's that easy. Do you?
It's not. And the author of this quote is escaping me, but it was once said by a famous philosopher that he said, "Give me a nation's songs, and I care not what the laws are," because
Hmm.
he understood that culture was shifted by the creators, by the common folk, by the people who sing the songs, and it's often said you can't legislate morality. That's true. And even it's seen that, have the culturalism that you shouldn't eat with your elbows on your table, on the table, right? You've heard that,
Correct.
like,
Yeah.
don't eat with your, yeah. Do you know where that came from? It's a
No, I do not.
fascinating point in history where We see that the culture is reformed by the artist and by society itself, not by laws. There was never a law. There was never a rule. It wasn't even a social construct until the painting of the Last Supper. Van Gogh, I believe it was. No, not Van Gogh. Yeah, I don't remember. I'm losing my authorship. Whoever painted the Last Supper, who was it? Do you know, Jesse? I'm losing
Some
my mind right now.
some dude,
Some guy with a paintbrush.
some
I
guy.
cannot believe I'm forgetting this. Anyway, he painted the Last Supper.
Constantopoulos.
Yeah, well, no, it definitely wasn't that. But I don't
Uh,
think it wasn't Van Gogh either. What am I thinking? Anyway, the only person with their elbows on the table is guess who? Judas. And because
ah,
Judas's elbows are on the table, it became culturally normal that we shouldn't eat with our elbows on the table. And now we have parents shouting at children saying, don't eat with your elbows on the table. And they don't even know where it came from. They don't even know why. It's just become systemic in our culture. And so I say all that to say that culture is not shaped by the laws. It's shaped by the creators. It's shaped by the musicians, the artists, the people who are in society, interacting with others and making observations through these other mediums. So no, we cannot legislate the problem away. However, if it became culturally normal, let's say for, you know, us to kill dogs, to take dogs and eat them, right? Like that happens in other parts of the world and things like that, but it's not culturally normal in the United States. But if it became culturally normal for that, and someone who is against that would not care that it's culturally normal, they would still want some legislation to align with their values and virtues. And so that's an example of having a virtue-based society, not necessarily the dog example, but the principle is that we were founded on virtues, not just rights of individuals, but virtues. And so life, the pursuit of happiness, we're actually founded in a virtue-based society. And so when our legislation doesn't match those virtues, we have like a national cognitive dissonance going on, right? And so things that don't match in the founding virtues, like in my opinion, ending the life of a child in the womb does not match the founding virtues of our nation, then we have this tension and this problem. And so legislation should follow the virtues of that nation. The virtues of that nation are shaped or at least expressed by society. And so society has to decide, is this virtuous or is this not? And that's where the argument should be. It shouldn't be, oh, please, Mr. President, pass the law and overturn this and pass that. That'll fix all our problems. No, it should be an introspective, who are we and what do we want to be? Who do we want to be as a nation? And start there
yeah.
and create from that place.
I think one of the worst things that could happen is for the Supreme Court to overthrow Roe v. Wade, and for the evangelical community to say, wipe their hand and say, "Oh, we did our job." That
Right.
ain't gonna do it. I mean, it's gonna require significantly more of an investment than just applauding the Supreme Court for overthrowing Roe v. Wade. You know?
Right. Right. And it breaks my heart more than anything to hear Christians shout without a solution. They're shouting at the
Mm,
wrongdoing without giving a real solution at the end of the day. And that is not the wisdom of heaven. It's not. So we need
yeah.
solution-based positions. We say that's wrong, and here's what's right, and here's what we'll do in order to support this right thing. You know?
Yeah, that's good. And I do want to talk about some real solutions that we all could get involved with on this issue, or some ideas that we would have for people who really want to change something in the life of a young woman or old woman or whoever is considering having an abortion. I want to talk about some of those things. But I think the important part out of this topic, this conversation that we just had about legislation, is that you don't change hearts through legislation. You don't legislate heart change.
Right.
You know, if you might be able to legislate abortion in America and see a drop in the number of abortions had. And good. If that happens, then I think, like what you were saying last week, if we could see a decrease, we're moving in the right direction. Like, if
Yeah.
whatever we can do to see a decrease in the number of abortions every year, then we're moving in the right direction. And I think, like I said, since most of the world's population is in fact pro-life, I think that regardless of what side of the platform you stand on, I think you can applaud that and recognize that the less abortions we have, the better. You know,
Right.
so. But I do want to spend a little bit of time here on bringing legitimizing bringing value to the women at whatever stage of life they are who feel
Mm-hmm.
like they've been stripped of choice and
Mm-hmm.
believe like their only option is to in fact go ahead and have an abortion. So of course we're talking about women in situations where their well-being or the health of them themselves is at risk by having a child, where the doctor's telling them if
Mm-hmm.
you have the child, there's a significant risk to your own life. We're talking about young women who have become pregnant and they're afraid to tell their parents, and they're in the stage of life where they're processing and say, I have no other choice. If I come out and come clean about this, my life is going to be over.
Mm-hmm.
Prostitution, we're talking about cases of rape and incest, and in the prostitution circumstance, it's the prostitute with a pimp who's saying you must do that or I'm going to kill you, or you're going to be on the
Mm-hmm.
outside, or I'm not going to give you any food, I'm not going to take care of you anymore. These are all situations to where the feeling of being the belief that you've been stripped of choice is a legitimate belief. Like I want to bring value to that and say yes, I we understand that your outlook right now is that you have no other choice.
Right.
And that is what is shaping reality for you. And we understand why you think the way that you do and why you're feeling the way that you do. And so, and for all of those people who have never been in that situation, I think the takeaway from that is when you're talking to somebody who is being faced with this decision and they're telling you, I didn't have a choice, or I have no choice, I have to do this. Our response is not to tell them that they're stupid. Like, no,
Right.
of course you have a choice. What are you talking about? You have this choice and this choice, and you had this person
Right.
available to you. No, your experience as being on the side of somebody who hasn't gone through this, what this young woman across from you has gone through, you don't get to decide for her what's true and what's not. Like your own life experience doesn't get to override hers. And so your job, our job on the other side is to understand where they are coming from. Like how do you get from point A to point B? What is true for you? What is your reality? What does that look like? And why is it that you believe what you believe? And
Right.
it's not that each one of us gets to determine what absolute truth is. It's that our life experiences and the things that were poured into us by the people in influence over us, the authorities over us, in a large part has shaped what we believe to be true. And so much of what, like, we know that Jesus came to destroy the works of the devil. And the works of the devil are the entanglement of lies that he's weaved into so many of us through a multitude of different media
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and or mediums. And so it's not our job to tell them that they're wrong. It's our job to explain to them that they actually do have a choice. Like, no,
Right.
I know that you feel stripped of choice, but you actually do have a choice, and here's why. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. And I actually just recently found out that statistically speaking, 43% of women have had an abortion. So
Wow.
when yeah, I was shocked by that too. But when you're speaking about abortion at all, not even forget the scenario of sitting across from someone, just talking about it, you need to understand 43% of the women that are listening to you have most likely had an abortion. And so you need to actually honor them to the point of validating their like Jesse was saying, their situation, their choice that they made was rooted in the fact that they felt that was the only choice they could make. And so, and you shouting at them and everything and saying, you know, that's stupid or you're stupid or calling them a baby killer doesn't change anything about what they did. So it's not even a productive line of action. It's actually just shaming them. And so my favorite thing to say is shame off you. All right. So
Hmm.
I don't want to do anything that brings shame on someone. There's some believers who think that that's biblically merited. I would say that's a really weak argument. Jesus came to remove your shame. And so we need to be that, take that position no matter what we're talking about. Shame off you. I don't want you to feel ashamed, but I do want to be able to communicate. And so we have to make the goal of our communication understanding. And in order to be understood, we need to understand. If you're just speaking hoping to be heard, but you're not actually allowing anyone else to speak and be heard, then you're just shouting at no one, because no one's going to listen to that guy or that girl. I mean, I see it all the time on Facebook. Everybody's shouting, but I'm like, I want to say, no one is listening to you. Okay. Because all you're doing is shouting, and it's obvious you don't want to hear anything. So if the goal of communication is not understanding, you'll never be understood. You have to be willing to understand the other side of the argument. And it's unfortunate, but many in the church have not learned this skill yet. Many think in the church that my communication should be measured by how I intended it to come across, what I intended them for them to understand. But that's not the goal of communicate or the measurement of communication. The true measurement of communication is what was understood, because I could speak in a different language right now in perfect Portuguese, but Jesse, you would not understand a single thing I'm saying, right? Even though I spoke it perfectly, I gave great grammar, I had syntax, all that stuff, whatever, and it would not make a difference because you didn't understand it, and that means we have not communicated, no matter what my intention was. So I'm speaking 30,000 feet because we need to zoom out a little bit and say, when we're talking about this, when we're sitting across the table from someone we disagree with, and if they're a woman, it's 43% chance they've had an abortion, then you have to be thinking, okay, this person is valuable no matter what they've done. I need to understand them. It will help me to understand why they came to that conclusion. Just what you said, Jesse. And that is where we can start to see solutions, not just picketing and shouting and, standing in front of certain organizations and calling them the gates of hell. Sorry, I'll just stop talking now.
Hey, I do know a few words of Portuguese, by the way.
Oh, well, there you go. I stand corrected.
Yeah.
And it's Da Vinci, by the way. It came to me while you were talking. The
Da
last second.
Vinci.
Da Vinci.
What a
Gosh.
guy.
I know.
All
So
right, yeah, that's so good. So give us, Caleb, in the few minutes that we have remaining, what are some solutions to this? What are some things that we can get involved with that can actually can be part of the real solution?
yeah, well, first of all, awareness of the real facts is super important. So I would say, please do your own research. Do not just believe the talking figureheads on whatever news station, because they all got them. Okay, I don't care what it's called. They all got them. Don't believe anybody for just because they're on the TV or on your Facebook feed. Please do your own research. But beyond that, I know of a few networks and things like that that offer continued care and things like that, and they're amazing. They're out there. There are organizations out there, and so I don't know if you want to mention a few of those, Jesse. Is that what you mean?
Yeah. Are any of those
Yeah,
organizations coming to your mind? Yeah, go ahead.
absolutely. Life Care Network in Brandon and Ruskin, if you're in the area, if you're near us, Life Care Network. They do free ultrasounds, free pregnancy tests, free everything, and they even have healing for those who regret getting their abortion. So if you're someone who regrets having an abortion, you can go and be, receive healing for your heart. To then have counseling, things like that. And they also, if you're considering an abortion, they will talk to you. They will not shame you. They will speak to you like a human being and respect you. And they'll even, if you choose to keep the child, they will walk with you for an entire year and give you weekly support and meetings and things like that. So they're great. Another one is humancoalition.org. You can go there, humancoalition.org. There's a network. You can give to these places. I personally, I don't mind saying it, I give to both these places because they offer continued support, continued care. They're not just holding a sign saying, don't do it. They're saying, don't do it. We'll help you and we'll get you out of your situation if it's a bad one. So those are two places that are doing great work, and they're respecting people no matter what their decisions are. Life Care Network locally and Human Coalition nationally.
That is great. So look up those resources in your region and see how you can get involved in a real way to serve self-sacrificially, to love somebody in ways that involves more than just holding up a sign, because that's not very loving anyway, unless it says I love you on the
Right.
sign. I guess that would be okay. Yeah. Another solution is that a lot of people aren't going to like hearing this, but it's underneath the category of, in order to prevent the number of abortions, then it would make sense to prevent the number of unwanted pregnancies. And one of the ways that you can do that is to make sure that people are aware and stress the importance of, if you're going to have um, premarital sex or sex outside of marriage, make sure that you take the proper precautions to prevent unwanted pregnancies. And it just makes sense. We don't want to think about our kids having sex out there, premarital sex and stuff like that. However, it does happen. So I don't know how you kind of breach that conversation with your loved ones, but if you want to reduce the number of abortions, then it is a good idea to reduce the number of unwanted pregnancies. So there you go.
And on the heels of that, speak to the value of intercourse. One of the things, and I know we're out of time here, but very quickly, one of the things that adds to the issue is the devaluing of sexual intercourse, that it's just a physical act. It's more than that. It is a deeply emotional, spiritual act that attaches you to a person, and it should be treasured, it should be valued, and it should be done in the context of a relationship that is not going to end, because that is what's going to take care of your heart. I'm saying these things because I care about your heart and I care about your wholeness. And so I think that we as Christians, believers, we need to communicate a proper value for intercourse, and not just let the world define its value. You know what I mean? We need to be intentional about speaking to the nature of it and the value of it, and that it should be something done in a proper context, not because it's some rule or we want to ruin your fun, but because it's for your wholeness. We want you to be whole. We want you to feel, well, to be connected to that life partner, and, to be done in what I would say in a covenantal relationship between a man and a woman. And so that is a major issue as well, that I believe culturally, like we talked about earlier, and on a societal level, would contribute to the value, the proper value of all life, the value of children in the womb, etc.
Amen. That was a lot more spiritual and kingdom than what I said. So
hey,
man, just want to let you know that.
It's all needed. It's all necessary.
Yeah, I'm saying make sure that you use a condom, and Caleb's saying, hey, let's build value on intercourse. Okay, let's teach that instead.
Not instead. And
touche.
Both and. I didn't say or. I said and.
Or yeah, and okay, yeah, let's do both.
Both.
Oh, that's great. Okay, we have come to the end. We're a few minutes over. Thanks for hanging with us. We would appreciate any other testimonies that you're experiencing out there. If you have any questions, make sure to send that to jbirkey at jbirkey.com. Sign up for our newsletter list so you can stay up with the latest news. You'll find all of that information in the show notes. We appreciate your time. We're looking forward to hearing from you. If you have any questions, we want to answer your questions. We want to do rapid fire Q&A. And so send us your questions, things that are burning on your heart. We'll do our best to get to those. And we will talk to you on the next episode of The Other Side.